Property tax issues have made many headlines as of late, with Indiana gubernatorial candidate Mike Braun's plan to cut property taxes stirring up controversy. But others have been debating how to handle increases to the base tax rate on farmland, which rose nearly 27% since last year. Clayton Baumgarth spoke with experts to get to the bottom of what can be done to provide relief to the agriculture industry.
Every year, farmers have to contend with operating costs and variable incomes to keep their livelihoods afloat.
Beans are down roughly about 25% what they were last year, and corn is down closer to 40% less than what it was last year. So those two things are kind of going against one another. Even though our profitability is extremely limited, our expenses from property taxes continue to go up.
And for the last 2 years, property taxes on agricultural land have seen big increases. Between 2022 and 2023, the base tax rate rose 16%. This year, it went up nearly 27%. And next year, it's estimated to increase by another 20%. That means within 3 years, the base tax rate for farmland has gone from $1,290 per acre to $2,280 per acre.
The taxes for the ground that we own for the farm probably went up close to $5,000 to $7,000 this past year, and then that means it could be as much as $10,000 more next year.
And for farmers like Hayhurst, the answer to the question, is there any end in sight for these increases, is straightforward.
Probably not, because as we've seen more and more inflation, it takes more and more money to run your counties every year. Schools cost us more, and that's a big portion of property tax, than just county government.
But what's going on here? Why has the base tax rate for farmland gone up so dramatically in recent years? Like any tax question, the answer is complex. Farmland used to be assessed with a negotiated base rate. Now, all assessed methods use objective measures of wealth.
What that's saying is, what is the property worth for its use if you were to sell it to a disinterested stranger, right?
There's a couple of ways of doing this. The sales approach is what's used on a typical home sale, what it's worth compared to similar homes in the area, while the cost approach looks at how much it would cost to replace everything on the property. Farmland uses a third approach, the income approach. This method looks at the income someone could earn off of land that is farmed on or rented out, and using an equation determines the base rate tax for agricultural land.
And it calculates what somebody operating, an average farmer operating an average acre of land in Indiana could earn, and then divides that by a capitalization rate.
The part of this equation causing the large increases year over year is the income or yield variable. That number comes from looking at the previous 6 years of crop operating income for farms and averaging them out. And as agriculture continues to see higher crop yields year over year, that number will continue to increase. In 2021, corn averaged at $5.45 per bushel. The next year, it went up to $7.20 per bushel. In years where crops are selling for less than average, like 2024, farmers are going to feel the squeeze.
It's going to take a couple of years for lower prices to get into the formula. That really benefits us when prices are going up and our base rates lagging behind. It doesn't benefit farmers as much when prices are going down and the base rate is higher.
It's important to note that an individual farmer's tax bill can be pulled up or down from the base rate depending on the quality of their land, local tax laws, and other factors. So what can be done? Lawmakers and interest groups are already beginning the conversation. Indiana Farm Bureau, Indiana Corn Growers Association, and Indiana Soybean Alliance have all said property taxes will be one of the largest issues they take into the 2025 legislative session.
Then I have some sympathy for my friends who are farmers because their taxes, you may argue with a good basis that they're too low, but they jump all over. We're not used to it on the other side.
Delaney says lawmakers should deal with the issue, but must do so in a measured way as to not upend the systems that rely on property taxes.
The reason we have property taxes is to support local government. We have 2,300 units of local government that get property tax. There's a number for you, including 270-some school districts that get property taxes.
At the state fair last week, all 3 candidates for lieutenant governor debated how they would handle the issue if elected. Republican candidate Micah Beckwith said he and gubernatorial candidate Mike Braun would cap year-over-year increases at 3%.
It can't grow 26% in a year. We're going to grow with economic stability. We're going to make sure that farmers are not seeing these wide swaths of just huge jumps in their property taxes.
Democratic candidate Terry Goodwin said that while he and gubernatorial candidate Jennifer McCormick don't have a plan yet, they would put one together to tackle the issue.
We're going to present opportunities in rural communities where they can grow and they can grow themselves out of these property tax crises that we're in. We've got crisis after crisis here that's been created by one-party rule in the last 20 years.
And Tanya Hudson, the Libertarian candidate, said that property taxes should be abolished altogether, with a 7% sales tax on home and property sales making up the difference.
Instead of property taxes, when you buy a home, you pay a 7% sales tax. 7%. If you can't afford the 7% at closing, you can pay 1% a year for 7 years.
Delaney's proposal is to increase the amount of support the state directly gives to school corporations.
If we send money from the state so that our percentage of support goes up, that not only helps the kids in the school, I'm talking about money to the school districts, that not only helps the kids in the school and the teachers, it helps all of them. Not only that, but it takes the pressure, it reduces the pressure to increase property taxes.
Hayhurst says at the end of the day, it's important that voters talk about the issue because it affects everyone, not just property owners and farmers.
Yes, agriculture is only 3% of the population, but the last time I checked, everybody eats probably 3 meals a day, so everybody's involved in agriculture about 3 times a day.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Clayton Baumgarth.
Higher taxes aren't the only thing worrying the Farm Bureau this summer. An industrial district being developed in Lebanon called the LEAP Pipeline Project has raised questions over who has the right to use the state's natural water supply.
This year with the LEAP district water quantity, and how do we protect agriculture and interest, and how do we make sure we come up with some guidelines, guardrails for some protections.
A lot of how this issue plays out in 2025 will be determined on Election Day in November, when Indiana's next state governor and lieutenant governor, who chairs the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, are elected.